My 9-year-old came crying after what Grandma said, and that was the day I realized that some words hit harder than a slap. I was in the kitchen when I heard the front door close a little too loudly, then soft, broken sobs. I walked into the living room and found my daughter. Lina curled up in the corner of the sofa, her tiny shoulders shaking, her fingers gripping her new doll like someone was about to take it away. I knelt in front of her and lifted her chin gently. "What happened, baby?" She tried to speak, but her voice kept cracking. Finally, she whispered, "Grandma said if I don't share my doll, then I shouldn't call her Grandma." For a second, I thought I misheard her. Over a doll. Over a simple toy. But it wasn't about the doll. It was about power. It was about making a child feel guilty for having boundaries. I felt something heavy drop inside my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm because my daughter needed strength, not tears. I pulled her into my arms and said softly, "No one gets to take their love away from you just because you say no?" She looked at me with watery eyes and asked the question that broke me. Am I a bad girl? That question echoed in my head again and again. A 9-year-old questioning her goodness because an adult tried to control her with affection. In that moment, I stopped being just a daughter-in-law. I became a shield, and shields don't shake. They stand firm. I wiped her tears and kissed her forehead, but inside I made a silent promise. If anyone tried to teach my daughter that love comes with conditions, I would make sure they learned a lesson instead. Because when a child cries over manipulation, a mother does not stay quiet. She watches. She waits. And then she acts. That night at dinner, everything looked normal on the surface. My mother-in-law laughed, served food, asked Lina about school as if nothing had happened. "Come sit next to Grandma," she said sweetly. But Lina tightened her grip on my sleeve and stayed close to me. I noticed every small detail. The hesitation. The forced smile. The way her appetite disappeared. This was not just one careless sentence. This was a pattern slowly forming. After dinner, I told my husband what had happened. He sighed and said, "Maybe she was just joking." Joking. That word irritated me more than anything else. Emotional blackmail wrapped in humor is still emotional blackmail. I looked at him and said calmly, "If we ignore this today, tomorrow she will believe love must be earned by obedience." He had no immediate answer. The next afternoon, I overheard another comment. "Good girls share everything. Otherwise, people won't like them." The tone was gentle, but the message was sharp. I stood in the hallway listening, my hands clenched. Lina quickly handed over her coloring pencils, even though she was still using them. I saw the shift happening. She was starting to give things away not out of kindness, but out of fear. And fear should never be the reason a child shares. That night, Lina asked me quietly, "Mama, if I give everyone what they want, will they always stay?" That sentence confirmed everything. This wasn't small. This wasn't harmless. It was shaping her self-worth. I decided then that my response would not be loud or dramatic. It would be strategic. Revenge is not screaming. Revenge is clarity. I would gather truth. I would expose behavior. And I would protect my child's heart with facts so undeniable that no one could twist them into a joke. Over the next few days, I paid close attention. I kept my phone nearby and recorded conversations when I sensed the familiar tone creeping in. "If you don't listen, I will be very sad. If you love Grandma, you will share." Each sentence sounded small alone, but together they formed a chain of pressure around a child's mind. Lina began overcompensating. She offered her snacks before anyone asked. She stopped saying no. One evening, she gave away her favorite hair clips and later whispered to me, "It's okay, Mama, I don't need them." But I knew she did. She just needed approval more. That realization burned inside me. I organized a small family lunch and invited close relatives. The house was full of casual laughter and clinking dishes. At the right moment, I said calmly, "Lina, tell everyone what made you sad this week." My mother-in-law immediately interrupted. "Oh, children exaggerate." I pressed play. Her own voice filled the room. Clear, undeniable, conditional. Affection spelled out in simple sentences. Silence followed. Heavy and uncomfortable. My husband looked stunned. A relative cleared his throat awkwardly. I looked directly at her and asked, Is this how we teach children about love? She tried to defend herself, but the recording had already spoken louder than excuses. I did not raise my voice. I did not insult her. I simply let the truth sit in the center of the table where everyone could see it. That was the first crack in her authority, because manipulation survives in secrecy, not in exposure. After that lunch, the atmosphere changed. My mother-in-law accused me of humiliating her. You turned everyone against me. I responded evenly. No, I turned the lights on. She avoided direct confrontation for a few days, but her pride was wounded. I set clear boundaries. No more private conversations that framed love as a reward. No more guilt-based lessons. If she wanted a relationship with my daughter, it had to be based on respect. My husband slowly began to notice the improvement in Lina. She laughed more. She asked for her things back confidently. One night, my mother-in-law said sharply, "You are making her stubborn." I smiled slightly and replied, "I am teaching her consent. There is a difference. Stubbornness refuses reason. Boundaries refuse manipulation." Word spread among relatives about what happened. Some quietly supported me. Others stayed neutral. But one thing was certain. She could no longer use emotional threats openly. Her power had limits now, and limits frustrate those who are used to control. I could see the shift in her eyes. The realization that the child she tried to pressure now had a mother who would not bend. Revenge is not always loud. Sometimes it is the steady construction of rules that cannot be crossed. Then came the real turning point. The school announced Grandparents' Day and sent home invitation cards. Lina brought hers to me and asked softly, "Mama, do I have to invite Grandma?" There was no fear in her voice this time, only choice. I told her, "You invite whoever makes you feel safe." She thought for 2 days. Then she wrote her grandfather's name instead. When my mother-in-law found out, she was furious. "I am her grandmother," I answered calmly. "A title is not a guarantee. It is a responsibility." On the day of the event, Lina stood on stage, holding the microphone with both hands. She said proudly, "My grandpa teaches me that love does not disappear when I say no." The audience clapped warmly. I glanced toward the back of the hall where my mother-in-law stood silently. For the first time, she looked uncertain. Not angry, not defensive, just confronted by the consequence of her own behavior. A child had chosen differently, and that choice was powerful. That was the moment I knew the lesson had landed exactly where it needed to. Today, my daughter still shares her toys. She still offers her snacks. But she does it freely. Not out of fear. Not out of pressure. If someone says, "If you love me, you will give this," she calmly responds, "Love doesn't work like that." Every time she says it, I feel pride rise in my chest. I did not seek revenge to hurt someone. I sought it to break a cycle. My mother-in-law eventually softened her approach. Maybe it was embarrassment. Maybe it was reflection. Either way, she learned that access to my child is earned through respect. And my daughter learned something even more important. Saying no does not make her bad. It makes her strong. When she first asked me if she was a bad girl, I felt helpless. Now when I see her standing firm, I feel victorious. Because the real revenge was not exposing manipulation. The real revenge was raising a child who will never confuse love with control. And that victory will last far longer than any argument ever could.